Hey, what is up? Welcome to this episode of the Entrepreneur to Entrepreneur podcast. As always, I'm your host, Brian Lofrumento, and today we've got a guest that not only I know, but all of you listeners already know him from episode 645. We are joined today by Alejandro Aguilar. Now, Alejandro's making history for the Entrepreneur to Entrepreneur podcast here because he's coming on to talk about one of his other businesses, because Alejandro, like so many guests, like myself, like so many of you listeners, is a multipreneur. He owns multiple businesses. So I want to tell you about the context that we're going to be having a conversation here today, because it's going to be very eye-opening, not only from the multipreneur perspective, but the work that Alejandro is doing with this company, CrossBorderly, is really incredible in changing the game in the world of e-commerce. So Alejandro, like I said, is a multipreneur, founder of CrossBorderly and other ventures. You heard about Resto Strategy back in episode 645. His relationship with international parcel shipping comes from having owned a freight forwarder in Miami in 2013 and 2014, focused on shipping immigrant boxes to Latin America, and then from 2019 to 2023, being one of the key directors for Liberty Express and supervising the export of over 500,000 packages per year to 17 different countries while complying with US and destination regulations, and also managing the marketing efforts in all of those markets. So Alejandro's doing a lot of work to enable customers to, or enable businesses to serve customers all around the world. I'm not going to say anything else. Let's dive straight into my interview today with Alejandro Aguilar. All right, Alejandro, here we are. Welcome back to the Entrepreneur to Entrepreneur podcast.
Nice to see you again, man.
Heck yeah, likewise. Listeners already know the deep knowledge and understanding of so many different business logistics and intricacies that you bring to the table. Talk to us about CrossBorderly. Obviously, we know you on the agency side, the service side, the marketing side, but obviously you saw a big gap in opportunity in the marketplace. Walk us through CrossBorderly.
Yeah, thank you. So like you said, I noticed a gap in the international e-commerce shipping, right? Right now, if you are an e-commerce store in the US and you want to get customers outside the US, which, by the way, it's a huge industry. There are, between Europe and Latin America, 1 billion customers, 1 billion e-commerce customers. This is not a number that I invented. I got it from Statista.com. And from my own experience working at Liberty Express, I was their commercial and technology director. I saw millions of 100,000 of packages shipping out every month, every year. Like I said, 500,000 packages per year to 17 different countries. And this is just one company, right? So to tell you a little bit about where this comes from, there's a network of companies similar to FedEx and UPS and DHL, which are a lot smaller in scale, and they are serving a very specific community, which is everyone that came to the US. And I'm Venezuelan and I ship stuff back to my country, to my parents. I send them gifts or food or medicines that they need and maybe they don't find in the country. You would think that this happens only in countries with difficulties, but no. There's a lot of shipments going to Brazil, to Colombia, to Chile. So basically, these companies, what they do is there are people in all around the world buying from stores in the US. They ship to an address in the US. This company consolidates of the packages and they ship it out, right? And then in the destination country, they do the customs, they do all the paperwork, and they deliver the package to the buyer, to the person who made the purchase. This process takes, depending on the country, it could go 48 hours, it could take 2 weeks, right? But right now, if you are a US based e-commerce store and you want to do that, you may think that your only options are UPS, DHL, FedEx, the big carriers, right? These big carriers have their structures are so big that their prices follow their structures, right? It's quite expensive to ship a package through one of these big carriers in terms of shipping costs, fuel costs, etc., etc., etc. And then the service typically implies that when the package arrives at destination, someone calls the buyer and tells them, hey, you own taxes and you have to pay this much. Sometimes those taxes can be high, right? But the thing is, the opportunity that I saw was the buyer, once they check out, once they say, I'm going to pay this much for shipping, they're not expecting to pay anything else. So it's a very bad customer experience to have someone call you and say, hey, no, you're still owe this amount of money, or you won't get the package. By talking with many sellers, e-commerce sellers, I learned that the rate of package abandonment at customs was very high. The customer will say sometimes, you know what, I'm not willing to pay anything else. I just let the package be confiscated at customs, and I will just get a refund. So by having this bad customer experience, the sellers will say, you know what, no, I'm not shipping internationally. That's it. Or I will ship at any rate available out there, which makes the transaction, unreasonable. So because we had all the structure in that company, in Liberty Express, at that point, we became experts on dealing with customs, on learning the regulations, what you can ship to where, simple example, there are countries like Peru, where if you want to ship a mobile phone, it has to be in one of the authorized mobile phones that you can bring into the country. It's an actual official list. Or if you want to ship to Argentina, you can only ship 3 items per category. But if an item is a bundle, that counts as 1. So you can ship 3 pairs of socks, or you can ship 3 bundles of 20 socks each. So that those little intricacies, plus what you need to do, but plus the delivery destination, we became experts at that. So we started approaching other sellers and telling them, hey, we can help you do this. And then we realized that there was an opportunity to help them market themselves. So one thing turned into the other. Then we need the technology to be able to do this at scale. And that's when I decided, no, I'm going to do this on my own. I'm going to start a new company. I'm going to create a new app that connects to the online store and does all these calculations and rules and regulations and analysis on its own. And then for the US e-commerce seller, it's just one transaction. You sold something to somebody in another country, you collect the money for the shipping, you collect the money for the taxes, you collect everything that the package is going to pay up to that person's hands. And I'll send you a label, you put it in a box, we pick it up, and we take it there.
Yeah, Alejandro, I love that overview. The thing that I really want to call out for listeners that I particularly love about what you're doing with CrossBorderly is we saw in episode 645 when you and I were talking about your marketing agency, Resto Strategy, is that company was born out of your experience in the restaurant industry, your personal experience. And now talking about CrossBorderly, again, you're originally from Venezuela and you've seen firsthand when you're mailing packages even to family members. You talk about medicine or anything you want to mail home. How difficult is it even just to mail a simple small thing. I know for my book, people might be thinking, well, how much is an international package really? For full transparency, when I mail a copy of my book here in the US, it's about $4.50 through ShipStation, which I've got linked up with USPS, and I get preferred commercial rates. But we get a lot of very upset emails from international listeners. I love all you international listeners of this podcast. But for us to mail even one paperback book internationally costs us over $27, which a lot of international listeners email me and they say, Brian, that's outrageous. It's more than the cost of the book. And it's absolutely correct. Alejandro, you live this firsthand and you solve this problem. We've had some awesome e-commerce entrepreneurs on the show in the past month. Shout out to Amy Robertson of Drymeister. Shout out to Jamie Mitri, who created Mospure. John Stojan helps a lot of e-commerce sellers. We know that people love e-commerce, but Alejandro, they probably don't realize how big of an opportunity. You talked about 1 billion customers worldwide. How big of an opportunity there is outside of the United States. Talk to us about that sort of buyer's market, that buying potential that companies are missing out on simply because the logistics are really freaking hard.
Yeah, well, there's more to it than just logistics, right? Because then you have to have, let's say, customer support. That's something that we can provide as well, you know? But just to give you an example, to keep working on your example, that $27 that you will pay for a book, let's say to Spain, with CrossBorderly would be $12, $13 max. So we're talking at least 50% cheaper. There's an issue there, and that's actually an opportunity for e-commerce stores to increase their order value, which is we live in pounds in the US, but the rest of the world lives in kilos. That means if I'm shipping something, if I'm shipping your book may weigh half a pound, but then when I'm gonna ship that from Madrid to, let's say, Barcelona, that segment they're gonna bill me by the kilo. You know, they will say, oh, the minimum billable weight is a kilo. So that has to go into the mix. The biggest barrier that I would think there is for many customers, and I think it's where we absolutely differentiate from the big carriers, is the knowledge that you need to have about customs. Basically, every time you ship something from one country to another, you are required to pay custom duties. That's, an assessment of the characteristics of the commodity that you're shipping, which comes with a rate. That's a tax, right? And then many other countries, they will charge for sales tax, which has different names in different countries. It could be VAT, it could be IVA in Spanish-speaking languages, countries. So the problem with international shipping is, what can I ship where? So how do I handle, let's say, Latin America? I just told you 317 million buyers, right? But those 370 million buyers are divided in 10 or 12 countries, which have 10 or 12 different set of rules and regulations of what you can and cannot do. We simplify that. We took care of all that, and we gave you a set of simplified rules that you can configure in your store, and that's it. That's it. That takes care of all the issues. So when you look at Latin America, for example, you would say it's very interesting. I want to reach those 317 million buyers, which, by the way, are buying anyhow. That's one thing. They're buying anyhow. They're buying from someone who's willing to sell them. Why? Because most countries look up to the US. They want to buy what they get in the US, right? If you live in Brazil and you want to go to the store, you will find only what it's available in that store, which is a limited selection of whatever is available here in the US. So they learn that they can go online, make a purchase, ship it to somewhere, and get the packages home. I sometimes I get the but it takes too long objection, right? Well, there are a billion packages shipping out of China. And most of those packages don't even have tracking information. We provide tracking information. You know where your package is at every step of the process. So people are willing to trade time for variety, assortment, or time for pricing, for cost. They will say, I don't care if it takes 2 weeks, but if I save money on shipping, well, I'm willing to make that trade off.
Yeah, Alejandro, the thing I want to dive into from here is obviously people listening to this as business owners, as e-commerce sellers. One part of it might be someone thinking, gosh, this stuff just sounds complicated. You talk about 12 different countries, there's 12 different sets of rules. How do I actually implement this into my workflow? And that's one thing you and I, before we hit record today, we talked about the nature of being a multipreneur is that it's different types of businesses. For you, Resto Strategy is a service-based agency, but CrossBorderly is in many ways a tech company. I love the fact that the biggest e-commerce platform out there is Shopify. You guys have a Shopify plugin where you actually plug right into someone's e-commerce store so they can just readily start accepting those international orders. Talk to us about the actual workflow. If I'm an e-commerce seller, which a lot of listeners, either some of them are and some of them want to be, if I'm an e-commerce seller, what logistics does it add on my behalf? How do I know how to handle these orders as they come in?
Well, that's where the technology part has to have a human component. It's not just technology, plug and play, and that's it, start shipping. We actually take time to onboard the customers because and this comes from experience. We've made many mistakes in the past trying to oversimplify the process, and then let me give you an example. You can, and this is going to be a great news for many supplement companies. You can ship supplements to most countries. Out of the 51 countries that I'm serving right now, only 2 won't receive supplements. But then, supplement is one thing. Supplement ingredient is something different. That's something that we learn the hard way, right? So the process is, and you should do this regardless of whatever service you're gonna do. You should do this if you're gonna ship with DHL. Take your products, take their characteristics. Your product are made of something, of fabric, of cardboard, of ingredients, natural ingredients, chemical components, whatever. Take that and take the harmonized code, HA's code. Sit down with your carrier and say, okay, I want to ship this to all these countries. Am I allowed to ship this to those countries? That's the part where we don't want to rush the process, and we just want to make sure that everything is checked out before we start shipping, before you start doing marketing, so you don't get frustrated customers getting orders canceled and all that. Very simple example. Most supplements can ship, but if you ship something with hyaluronic acid, which is something very common in beauty supplements, sometimes it's mixed with collagen, sometimes it's a serum, sometimes it's, many beauty cosmetic products has it. You cannot ship that to Chile, because in Chile, which is a great market for supplements and cosmetics, hyaluronic acid is a controlled substance. Same thing with CBD and hemp and everything that is marijuana related or THC related. That's a big no-no. That, don't even start. Don't try it. Carriers won't take it. Countries don't want it. Same thing with vaping. But anything that is a household good, household item, clothing, shoes, consumer electronics, toys, baby items, supplements, jewelry that is not an actual piece of gold, not high value jewelry, anything that is an accessory, all that can ship easily, and it's the biggest categories going out like in thousands of packages per day.
Alejandro,
Other than that you have limitations in terms of value, the value of the purchase, and it's customary to have a limit in number of items, right? Because and this is important to know, a lot of people would use the courier layer, and courier is actually a type of shipment that is intended to be from person to person. That person can be a company, but it's intended for non-commercial purposes. You're not supposed to get 100 pair of shoes via courier. You can get three, you can get four, but if you get 10, nobody or the customers will say this is not normal behavior. Who buys 10 pairs of shoes at the same time?
yeah, that's so fascinating to hear these real life examples. And Alejandro, listeners know this about me, but I obviously have equity in multiple different businesses. And one of those is an online fitness company with a former pro soccer player. Shout out to Mark Zimmerman. And part of that business is we have a supplement line. And Alejandro, I will very ashamedly admit this on the air here with you that we don't do business internationally because of exactly what you said. The cost of shipping supplements worldwide for us is incredible. And we had some unhappy customers because of our shipping rates that fell out of our control. So hearing your real life examples about that and the intricacies that go into it, I think it's fascinating to hear, and especially hearing those different product lines that you're talking about that actually perform really well internationally. But I've got to ask you, because I also think that you're uniquely positioned here as a marketer. You are a multipreneur at heart, but you're also a marketer at heart, is that marketing to international e-commerce markets is its own separate beast. There's other considerations there. Talk to us about those differences when it comes to expanding into those, because it's very exciting to be able to market to 1 billion additional customers. But what do we have to consider in that regard?
Two things. The first one, the good news, it's extremely cheap to market outside the US. I would say it's like 20% of the cost of marketing in the US, and the reason is not a lot of people are doing it. So there's a lot of inventory. There's a lot of people that you can reach. The second part is the funnel. The funnel is different because, and we learned this. I learned this when doing marketing at Liberty Express. We were trying to optimize for conversions and all that, and trying to automate the funnel, but we failed to realize for some time that the biggest barrier in doing international commerce is the fear of being tricked by the seller that the buyer has. Remember, this person is sitting in another country, is powerless on what they can do, so the best way to market in those countries is to have actual conversations. When you optimize your marketing to generate conversations, and I'm talking about Instagram DMs, I'm talking about Facebook messages. Facebook works really well in those countries. I'm talking about WhatsApp. If you're going to do business internationally, you need to get WhatsApp going. So if you optimize to generate conversations, I personally generated over 35,000 conversations at less than $1 each. So if you put a 10% or a 5% conversion rate on that, you will be paying a couple dollars, very few dollars to actually get a customer. If you pair that with the ability of providing free shipping, because you're going to know the rates, and the rates are going to be lower, and you know that you're going to be shipping at least 2 pounds, create a bundle, increase your order value, recover the cost of acquisition fast. I'm sorry. recover the cost of acquisition fast, and keep the wheel going. For those conversations, there's another thing that you should do. You should be working with remote workers from low cost countries. At Libre Express, we created a 25-person call center in Peru, especially because all our customers speak Spanish. That if we did that in the US, it would have cost us 10 times higher, or for the price of two agents in the US, we had 25 in another country. So, on top of that, if you take advantage of AI that processes natural language, you could be training a bot that sounds really natural and taking care of much of those customer requests, and then train the bot to actually send the link, make the sale, and take advantage of that channel and that transaction. Then when you capture the email and you deliver the first package and you build that trust, then you keep marketing via email, or you do retargeting via email. But I wouldn't recommend, in my experience, to do conversion campaigns to call audiences in Latin America or Europe. They don't know you. They're too far away. They feel unprotected. They fear that the package is not going to arrive. They want to ask questions. How does it work? How does it smell? How does it taste? Does it work with this? Does it work with that? Especially in the supplements part, they will ask you, I take this medication. Does it react to that? So you want to establish that trust, and it's a cultural thing. It's a cultural thing. Latin Americans and Europeans, we are very social peoples. So you want to have those conversations. You want to treat that person as a friend, and then you want to close this sale in that conversation. Do not tell them, go here and create an account. No, capture the data, create the account right there. And like I said, there is enough AI available for you to semi-automate that process and just have, people for the cases that need escalation.
Yeah, Alejandro, this is why I love the way that your business mind works, because now we're talking about so many different things. We're talking about logistics, we're talking about costs, we're talking about locality, we're talking about marketing. You're bringing in AI tools to assist us. To me, it almost seems like this is a machine in and of itself for any e-commerce seller who says, hey, I want to enter the international game. Now we're talking about lower costs to get in front of those people, one of the rare players there. And I also think that there's not as much marketing or ad fatigue in these other markets. For those of us who live here in the US, we know how often we're told about this product and that product. It doesn't necessarily happen overseas, which it presents a big opportunity area, and especially having a company like CrossBorderly in your pocket to assist you in that. The next question, Alejandro, I think it's the natural question, I'm sure you get it all the time, is, okay, let's say I'm an e-commerce seller and I want to start selling internationally. What does that mean? Does it mean dropping in a country code list on my Shopify website and accepting orders? How do we actually go about it? Does it mean paperwork to start getting, courier accounts set up with more local providers, not the DHLs of the world? What's the actual setup?
No, actually, it's an email to me. That's basically what you need. You set up an account with me. CrossBorderly. It's the gateway. It's the turnkey international logistics and sales manager, if you want. That's our goal. Our goal is to be a turnkey international expansion company. It started with technology. It is heavily based on tech, but we want you to not worry about, oh, now I have another company. Now I have to build another site and have another structure. It's going to cost me a bunch of money. No, you can start with your same Shopify store. By the way, we're going to expand to WooCommerce and BigCommerce and all the other platforms. Well, we started with Shopify for obvious reasons. So you can start with your same store, I would say if you want to make it simpler, just add a language drop down selector and have somebody actually read the text and correct the grammar and you know and the text for it to make sense. It's going to be a one-time effort. But if not, the international buyer will use translations and you know, right click, translate this page. That's something that is built in every browser, and they will figure it out. You know, when people want to buy, they will figure it out. So if you make it easier by having translations, that will work great for you, especially if you want to target the Brazilian market. By the way, Brazil, which is one of the biggest markets and had the greatest and highest barriers, they're changing their laws. And recently they passed a change to the courier law where they increase the tax-free threshold from $50 to $300. So it's a lot of of business opportunity there. So it's as simple as you set up an account with me, with us, with CrossBorderly. Then we go into your business, understand your product, understand, you know, their weights, their cost, their composition. We help you get the HA's codes. We validate that with our carriers, and you are just dealing with Alejandro and his team. That's all. Your whole international strategy is dealing with us. We will tell you you can ship here, you cannot ship here. Make sure that the car value doesn't go over this amount. And if something falls through the cracks, when we get the package, we have the responsibility to inspect that package. You know, we have that responsibility with U.S. Customs. We need to know what we are shipping out. So we inspect the package and we say, hey, wait, if we ship this like it is, it's gonna be a problem. Let's split it in two, right? So let's split it in two, and we ship two packages. It's gonna be same thing, and you may actually save some money because maybe you won't trigger a tax rule in the destination. So it's the same shipping into the U.S. when you do returns. We can do returns from most countries. At very cheap rates too, or we can actually hold the package at the country, and if you for a period, if you make a sale, we can ship that out. You know, so it's a truly, it's like having a full logistics and sales partner working for you. You don't need to deal with multiple carriers. You don't need to open multiple accounts. You open an account with us.
Yeah, I love that, Alejandro, because you took the words right out of my mouth. That's what I've been picturing it as, is literally it's an extension of your team that handles your international expansion plans and fulfillment. So I absolutely love that. Alejandro, you're a wealth of knowledge, and I love how you combine across all your businesses. You manage to combine so much of your personal, your life experiences with your business experiences, with your marketing hat on. So as we come towards the end of this interview, you already know the drill. You know that I love to do this. Yeah. I want you to talk to the entrepreneurs out there who are looking to get into the e-commerce game, who are hearing so many opportunity areas. You mentioned Brazil as an emerging market, for example. How many potential buyers are out there? And when we're talking e-commerce, you know, you sell an online course, okay, you're limited to the language. You're not creating an online course in languages. But if you've got an awesome product, that works for people all over the world. So for all of those entrepreneurs wanting to dip their toes into international e-commerce, as well as for all the already e-commerce entrepreneurs who are saying, wait, Alejandro, this exposes me to a lot more buyers, a way bigger audience. What's your best advice for them? What's the one thing after today's episode they should sit down and say, you know what? I need to consider this and I need to do this so that I can start expanding internationally?
Well, you need to know your product. You need to know your product really well. You need to know your margins, and you need to look at these differently, right? You need to plan to get out. If you ask me, I will get a small marketing budget, and I'm talking $300, something like that, $10 a day, and pick a couple of countries. I will pick Mexico. I will pick Colombia. I will pick Chile, Brazil, UK, Australia, those are very good countries. I would pick a small budget, a few countries. If you're gonna do 6 countries, you don't work with $10 a day. Maybe it's gonna need $30 a day, but you don't need a big budget. Take that and start generating conversations and understand the questions that your customers have. Build your answer sheet, understand the objections. The shipping part is taken care of. That I will give you that answer. But the how to use this, will it fit, will it work? The questions about your product, have all those answers and start generating conversations. So you understand how many touches it takes to close a sale. Then you need to have people trained that understand that their job is to take the customer by the hand and take them to the checkout process. If you give them the instruction to go and do something out of your site, that's gonna hurt your effort. It's gonna hurt your effort because that person, it's very likely to get distracted. I'm gonna do this tomorrow. I'm gonna do this some other time. I'm gonna wait until I get my paycheck, whatever. So start doing some small marketing campaigns, focus on a limited number of countries, and start generating conversations so you know the questions about your product. Then put that into your marketing, put that, use that as inputs, but have a couple of, at least one person ready to answer those questions for those customers, and you will see your transactions coming in. I wouldn't change anything in your store right now. Don't change anything. Don't do translations. Don't do anything. Just do a little bit of marketing and sense your water. If you want to have a conversation with me regarding, hey, I sell this kind of product, where should I ship it? I'm open to it. I'm happy to have a conversation with anyone, and help them get get their feet in the water. I don't, and this is something important. See this as additional cash flow, a higher, inventory turnover. This is not gonna be your meal ticket in the short term. You're gonna ship one package, and I'm gonna help you. I'm gonna help you ship that one package. I'm not gonna punish you because you reach a minimum threshold. Start with one. Get to 2, get to 5, get to 10. Outside of the US, word of mouth is incredibly powerful. Incredibly powerful. Then do the same thing. Get your review, get your emails sequence in place. Be close to that customer, and that customer will automatically become an ambassador of your brand. That's what I would do.
Yeah, listeners, you just saw Alejandro in real time give you an international expansion plan. And Alejandro, the thing I love about the way that you did that is you didn't say, yeah, expand internationally, start shipping to 100 countries today. You said, pick a few countries, and then you talk about a basic marketing plan, $10 a day, $20 a day, $30 a day to start initiating those conversations. And it really culminates. I love the final step of your plan is ship your first international package, leverage CrossBorderly to achieve that first one, because everybody starts with just that first package. So it's attainable.
Correct.
It's something that we can work towards. I love that perspective. Alejandro, want to open the stage to you. You've been such a wealth of knowledge here today. I know that listeners are already familiar with you, but tell them where they should go to learn more about CrossBorderly, take the next steps, and follow all the awesome work that you're doing.
Thank you, Ryan. So the website is very simple. It's CrossBorderly, cross-border, like the regular word for international shipping, terminated by ly.com. My personal email is alejandro@crossborderly.com. Maybe you can put that in the podcast comments, Brian. And let's have your initial conversation should be with us. Let us get to know you. Let us see your product. Let us understand what you're doing, and we're going to give you a very simple roadmap on how to get your product cross-border. If you are already getting inquiries from other countries, just set up the rate, open up the possibility to ship to other countries, and we will help you. So we can do this both ways. Very plan ahead, step by step, like a project, or we can fly and build a plane at the same time. Whatever you choose, reach out to us. We are a people company that loves technology. We are not a SaaS technology that will hide behind a chat, behind a paywall. We don't charge for onboarding. We only charge when you ship something with us. Other than that, we are here to help you become international in a safe, predictable, and profitable way.
Yes, Alejandro, I love that. And listeners, you for sure already know with a double dose of Alejandro here on the show, how accessible he is and how much he genuinely loves business and marketing. That's what I love about you, Alejandro. It's been such a pleasure to have you back on the show. Listeners, you know the drill. Wherever it is that you're tuning in, scroll right on down. Alejandro's business website for CrossBorderly is at crossborderly.com. His personal email address to get a hold of him and start having that conversation. Even if you don't already have a store just yet, but you know you want to, have that conversation. If you do already have a store, for sure have that conversation. His email address is alejandro@crossborderly.com. Otherwise, Alejandro, thank you so much for joining us here today, once again, on the Entrepreneur to Entrepreneur podcast.
Thank you, Brian. It's a pleasure for me to be here. And I'm sure I have something else in my pipeline, so we're going to meet again.
Yes, super excited for it already.